everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and it's another day, so it's another sewing tutorial, or sew along, whichever way you want to refer to them. Now this one is for a pattern that I actually purchased back in, well, it must be before 2014, I think. So I've had it over, well, probably 10 years or plus now. And I purchased it from a company or a lady designer on Etsy. And I'm going to pop a picture up here for you so you can have a look. And the channel on Etsy is called, or the shop on Etsy is called SewYouCanToo. And she's a Canadian lady. And she makes 3D felt pillows, cushions. And these felt flowers that you can make, and being as we all like to work in felt anyway, or we have done for our animals or for our little friends and their clothes, then I just thought that this was a really nice pattern that you could either use scraps of felt for, but you do need quite a few, or if you've got a bit of yardage of felt left over and you wanted to do something nice with it, then you could do. It makes a fabulous statement cushion for, I'll put a picture up here so you can see what I'm talking about. It makes a fabulous statement cushion for a room. It's not necessarily one you're going to want people to use. It's going to be one that you're going to use decoratively, that will go onto a bed or onto a chair, and then you remove it then when you actually want to sit down, because otherwise the flower gets really crushed and you don't really want to spoil the 3D effect of the cushion. So I've actually used it before. I've made presents for my aunts, I've made presents for my mum. My mum's got one on her bed, but I've also had people before who I've made one for who used it for wall art. So you could buy a canvas for in your room, and then you can have your felt flower mounted onto the canvas, either sew it on or with glue gun, and that then gives you a really, really lovely, that is 3D stunning effect to have. Now you're going to need to purchase the pattern, and I've had a quick check, and I think that the pattern's just under £5 with VAT included. So bearing in mind that I've had this over 10 years, that feels like it's a really good, is it 50p a year? 10 years, fiver, less than that, isn't it? I'm not very good at maths, so I'm going to pretend I even said that. But it's just a really nice pattern, and a nice construction that you can have. You can either attach it, once you've made your flower, you can attach it to a ready-made pillow, or like me, you can make a pillow yourself. And in actual fact, the instructions include what you need to do in order to make a cushion of your own. So not only do you get the 3D effect flower, but you also get how to make a cushion as well, and to put that onto your cushion should you wish. So great value, I think, for that pattern. Really is a good one to do. And as I say, I've already started cutting it out, so I'm going to sort of catch you up with where I am, and then we can then move forward with it. But I kind of started it, and then I thought, oh, I wonder if my YouTube family would quite like to know how to do this. So that's why I've just jumped straight on. I've just tried to zhuzh my hair a bit and make myself look presentable for you, so that we can get on with sewing. So I'll turn the camera down and we'll have a little look at this. Okay, so I've kind of got myself sort of set out a little bit, and I'm a little bit ahead of where you'll be. You'll need to go along to the website, to the Etsy page. You'll need to purchase the pattern, and then you'll need to print that off. And I printed mine out onto paper. Then what I suggest you do is you make a cardboard template. So like we've done before, where we trace off around it on a piece of tracing paper, and then we glue that tracing paper onto some card, and then we cut around the card. Now, the petals that I'm all using are all in the series marked A, so you'll need those. There are a couple of different designs of the cushion, but if you're following along with what I'm doing, then we're following just for the flower marked A. So you'll need all of those printing off, and there's 6 different petals that we've got printed off. And because I've made this a few times, I actually ended up making having a, not as perspex, what to call it, acrylic, that's the word I wanted, acrylic template made, and then I stuck some self-adhesive Velcro bit on the back there with the hook, so that they stayed nicely while I was drawing round them onto my felt. But of course you don't need to be this technical. If you're just having a go at making one, then you can just start off with a cardboard template, and that will work really, really well with you. So you probably can't see the edges of my template there, but it's made to match the design of the petals that you're going to get. So your petals come out like this. So in actual fact, you could print off 2 copies, couldn't you, and cut round these instead of tracing it off, and then glue that onto your card, and then you'll be able to cut those out. The other thing that you will need is also a circle, and this is the one that I've used. You can see how well worn this one is, and I've copied this out and then I've quartered it, and I'll show you how we work with that. So what I've done is I've cut out my circle out of my felt, and I'm actually using the same felt that I used for the duffel coat. I knew I was going to be making one of these cushions, so I bought extra felt. So one circle cut out in the circle A, that's the one I've cut out, and we'll work with that in a bit. And then you'll need to cut out all of your petals. So of petal number 1, you're going to cut out 17. Petal number 2, you're going to cut out 15. Petal number 3, you're going to cut out 12. Petal number 4, you're going to cut out 9. Petal number 5, you're going to cut out 5. And then petal number 6, you're going to cut out 4. And the best thing to do is to put these into your piles and have them in the right order of which they are numbered, just because then they all go down in size, and you'll see why that's useful as we move forward. So we've talked about the pattern, we've talked about making a template. Oh, that's my holster trouser patterns. Let's put those out of the way. Let's put those in. And now we're going to get started. So you're going to need to have so once you've cut all of these out, and I traced around them in pencil around my cardboard, but then when you're cutting them out, just make sure that you cut out the edge of the pencil, because if you're not careful, you get a little bit of a shading on the edge, and it might not affect you too much, but you might not want that when you're making your petals and putting those together. So just be aware that you might have that on the edge. So it's quite a close cut that you need to do, or just slightly less than your pencil line, and that should then cut those out nicely. So once you've got all of your piles together, you're going to need to choose a thread, and we want a thread that's going to coordinate with our felt so that you can't see that. So let me just choose my my thread colour. I've got a lovely light blue that's going to match quite nicely onto there, so that's what I'm going to use for mine. So let me get my machine all set up with my bobbin thread and my top thread the same colour, and then we'll have a look and see what we need to do next to get this started. Okay, so I've got my machine set up with my blue bobbin thread and my blue top thread, so we're ready to go with that. And I've just got an ordinary needle, and I've just got my ordinary presser foot on at the moment. This is a project that does benefit from using a walking foot, so if you've got one of those, especially when we're sewing the actual flower together later, then that's one that we might well switch with. But I'll try with my ordinary foot and see how we get on, and then if you've not got a walking foot, you'll still know it's possible. The other thing to remember is that you can sew this project completely by hand if you want to as well. So if you wanted to sew it by hand, then you can do, and that will then also negate the need for a walking foot, or do what you can with your machine and then move on to hand if you struggle. So that's just to say that you don't have to do it by machine if you don't want to. So the first thing that we're going to do then is we're going to start off with petal 1. So I'm take off my template and pop that to one side, and then working with each flower, we're going to fold them into each core edge into the middle. Now you want to keep the flat edge together, so you're curving it in like that so that you get this kind of flat effect on the end there. And that's going to give this petal the 3D shape that we're going to love later on. So you want to butt your ends up together. Just pull them in so that they kind of fit nicely together, and then we're going to then just start and put a few stitches just about 1/4 inch in from the edge, and then we're just going to just sew straight across that. But before, and put your needle in your work just so you've got that anchored down. Then without taking the next one out, the way that I do it is I then work onto my next one. So I now fold my next one in and get it as neat as I can do on that bottom edge. Just like that, and then I'm just going to butt that up against the next one without really a gap, and just sew straight across onto that one. And you're going to just repeat that process for all of your number 1 petals. It's fairly easy design to do, but it's just nice to see it done sometimes, isn't it? So butting this back up again. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit of a gap between the threads, because when it sort of runs off, it doesn't always pick it up straight away, does it, when we're running through? So again, just get those edges just nice and neatly together as best as you can do. Flatten it off with your fingers, and then you're going to then sew across the next one. And what we're making is we're making this chain at the back here with all of these petals. Makes a really nice effect. So let me get on and do all of these number ones. I'll speed the video up so you don't have to sit through and watch everything. Okay, and then when you get to the end, just take the needle out of the work and just break that off. We've got this lovely long string of all of our number one petals. So pop that to one side because that's your first one to do. And then we're going to then do exactly the same with petals number two. So let's get number two petals, fold them up into the half. Pop the machine on and sew across the end. So quite a lot of repetition in this, but it does make it quite a quick process for this section. And obviously you can do this, as I said, by hand, but you might want to just keep an eye on, have little bags or freezer bags that your petals go into, or little pots, so that you don't then have to try and work out which is the other size. Because some of them, whilst they're quite obvious once they're flat, once they start to curl, it can be a little bit more tricky just to tell which one is which. So carrying on all the way through with number two petals. So I've just got to the end of sewing my number two petals. So I've got those all strung together as well. So let's pop those in a pile. And then I'm going to do the same with number 3 and number 4, but I'm not going to do number 5 and number 6. So just repeat that same process with 3 and 4, and then meet me back here and we'll talk about petal size 5 and 6, which are the two smallest ones. So now you can see all of my piles of petals apart from 5 and 6. So petals 5, with those we're going to fold those over so it's a third of the way over. So you're going to overlap, so you've got your 3 edges on the end there, look, like that. It's a bit like a Swiss roll, isn't it? Or a cinnamon swirl. So we're folding those across, and then so it's a tight, well, basically it's a tighter petal, isn't it? But again, you can then just at 1/4 inch seam allowance just sew over the end of those. Just do a few stitches and then move on to your next one, but just make sure that you're folding that one across a third of the way and the other one over the top, and then just put it inside under your machine, and then that will get those all done for you. So you're going to do all 5 of those. Yep, that's just 5 petals, isn't it, that way? Just lift your presser foot if you need to, just to get the petal under close enough to the other one. It doesn't matter if you've got a string of threads between each one, so don't worry about that if you run off. And you can sew these all separately, but in my opinion it is better if you can link them like this when you're sewing them, because it does make it easier when you come to place them later, I think anyway. Right, so that's that last one done. Then the other ones we're going to leave for the moment. So let's take those out, and I'm just keeping my templates with them so I know which ones are which. Okay, so that's the section 4 there at the moment. So we've got all of those there. The next thing you're going to do is take your circle template, and I've cut this out of my felt, just roughly. I did 1/4 my felt and then cut it out, so it's rough, approximate, and that's fine. But what I then do is I cut my template, not cut it, I fold it into quarters, and then I'm going to fold my fabric into a 1/4 as well, so the ends are together. And then I'm just going to put a pin where that centre bit is, because we just want that centre point just there, and that's found that for us now. So whilst I've got that in place, I'm going to be using my pencil, and I can just mark that. You can use a Frixion pen if you want to as well, but we just need that dot in the centre, because what we're going to do now is we're going to keep this dot, the centre of this, if you can see that, the centre of our template just onto our line, and we're just going to mark each of those rings apart from this extra one at the end here. We don't need that one, it's just there. And then the way that I then got the lines there is then I just move it on slightly, make sure the nose of that triangle is in place, and just do my next row of dots on both sides. And I found this is the quickest way and easiest way just to mark this up. We all find our own ways of doing things, don't we, as over time. All of these marks are going to be completely hidden when we do the sewing the petals on, so you don't need to worry about these. But if you've got a Frixion pen, you can use it. As I said, a pencil works really well too. So just keep marking all of these on, and hopefully you can see on the picture, on the video, you can see how those marks are starting to give us those reference lines. That's better, isn't it, like that? And by moving it on across as a quarter like this, you get both, you get two sides marked at the same time. Perhaps move it on once more, and I think we'll be about ready to join those up. So then all I do now is just go round, a bit like when we're adding the seam allowance onto Lily Rose Doll's patterns, is I just go round in a circle and just join up each row of those dots, those dashes that we just did. So you're going to end up with a row of circles around here. And just move on to the next one. It just means you can just join those together and you've got your row of circles like that. To give you your template. Put the template away to one side, and we're going to start from the outside and work in. That's the best way that I found. So taking petals number 1, which are these ones here, the big ones, let's just sort of move these out of the way so you can see a bit better. And you're going to need your pins. You're going to find your start of your line and take your starting threads off. Let me just find my snips. There they are. So take just the starting threads off where we started those. And you're going to take one of your petals and you're going to lie it so that the end of your petal lies on the circle, and then you're going to put a pin in the middle. So you need to have a pin in there. So then you just move your way around, adding your pins, your circles on, and I pin out from the outside into the centre, and you want your cut edge of your petal to be going up against the edge of your circle like that. Now, one thing that is a good idea is, if you can untangle all of your petals, is to just lay this around the outside first, and just make sure that, because the thicknesses of felt can vary, you just want to make sure that all of your petals are going to fit in there nicely, otherwise you need to budge them up together. Try and avoid taking petals out if you can. You're better off to budge them up together and snuggle them up together, because that's what's going to give you the fullness of your flower. If you start taking petals out, your flower isn't going to look quite as full and quite as dramatic. So I'm going to move some of mine up slightly. And I'm also just moving my pin as well, so I can sort of see it sitting on top of a petal rather than they were starting to hide underneath. If I haven't got enough room, I will jettison one petal, especially when we've got so many on here. But I won't, as we get further in, you want to try not to lose those petals. So budge those right up against each other. This is why I said it doesn't matter if you've got a little string of your threads between your fabrics. And if you find this next bit hard, then this is definitely sort of a place where you can hand sew if you wish. But if you're familiar with working with felt, and a lot of you I know are, then you might well be okay with doing this. So things are starting to budge up, as you can see, and I'm not tucking them under each other, but I am really pushing those in together so they're nice and close right on that edge. Just keep to your circle. And there's so many ways you can do these flowers. I mean, you could do it with a brown front, yellow outside and brown in the middle, and that would make a nice sunflower design, wouldn't it? You know, you can in the pattern, they've got double layers of the petals. Obviously, that makes it a bit thicker, but they've got that. They've got a different option where you can put a fabric insert into the middle of a flower petal in order to make your flower two-tone as well. So all of that are different design ideas that all come in the same pattern. Just gives you endless opportunities, doesn't it? Oops, pin doesn't want to go through. That's it. And then one more left just to pin in, and just make sure that's tucked in nicely. Don't worry about how the petals are looking at the moment. They need to sort of be flat, so don't worry about those. We're going to zhuzh those all up later, but that's how your petals are going to look on your first row go round. And on the back here, you're going to see you've got an overlap of felt. You need that overlap of felt to be able to attach your cushion, to your flower panel, if you like, let's call this a flower panel, to your cushion. So you do need some overlap, so don't go too close to the edge. But that's the way that we want to. So that's just on that first row of circles. So next we are going to go back to the machine. And if we can remember where we started, or we can snip between, it depends. You just got to, in order to manipulate your machine and your threads so that you're going inside, it gets more difficult as you go. And then you want to manipulate your flower so that you are sewing on your flower. So I've got the edge of my presser foot onto the cut edge of the flower, onto the circle. I've got my ends out here so I can hold on to that to get me started. Lost the other one, but we'll go with that. And then I'm going to take the pin out of the first one and take a few stitches forward and there's 2 stitches back just to start that off. And then needle in the work just to hold that down. And then as you get to each flower, each petal, keeping your presser foot on your circle, you're going to then either pivot or just sew over the ends. And it should be similar to where you've already sewn the bottom of the petals shut anyway. But it's much easier to do it in 2 passes, to sew your petals first, so they hold their shape, and get them pinned on in that order before then attaching them onto the circle. So I'm just using an ordinary straight stitch for stitching these on. As you can see, the machine is coping quite well with this so far. So that's always good. We've got a thread there that we'll take off before it gets lost and then pokes out at another time. Let's take that one off as well. I've been starting all my stocking threads. So let's just keep going around. So we're not back to the beginning yet. We'll know when we get to the beginning, because our pins, we'll run out of pins to remove. I'm just anchoring the felt down with this hand, my left hand, as I'm just sewing over where those petals are. We're getting there, aren't we? Nearly at the end. I think it's a really effective pillow. I think it's one of those things that actually looks like it's a lot more complicated than it is, and it does take some time to do all the cutting out of the petals. But I could also see this in with petals in different colours as well, and do a bit of a medley of those colours. Go back to the beginning, so just reverse there, and then we're going to take the needle out of our work and cut off our starting and our stopping threads. That one done. Right, so let's find our petal number 2. So this is our petal number 2. So put our template out of the way. Let's take off those starting and stopping threads for a start, so they don't catch us out later. I do put these threads in the bin, I'm not just throwing them behind me, honest. Okay, so again, making sure you've got the opening of your petal up, and it doesn't matter whether you start in the same place or not. You're just going to take one of your petals. Let's do it. Let's work this way. You work towards me. That's probably easier for me. And then you're just going to lay your cut edge of the petal onto the pencil edge of your circle. The only thing that I would suggest is that your next petal goes in between a join of one petal. It doesn't go directly over the top of the petal. Sorry, let me get this right. It goes, you don't want them to line up so that you've got gaps going all the way through. The best effect is if you actually just stagger them. So whereas here I've got an opening between two petals, that's where I'll lay my first petal and try and get them in that order, rather than putting it straight on top and have an opening on top of an opening. I hope that makes sense. So like this one here, we've got the opening down the centre. Wherever I'm going to lay that, I've got an opening down the centre of this petal here. So I'm not going to lay it directly on top of that petal like that. I'm going to just stagger it so that the opening falls between the two petals. Hope that does make sense for you. And then I'm going to put a pin in. Now, as these get thicker, you might find that you can't put a pin all the way through the felt. So long as it's attached to a petal that is attached to the pillow or to this panel, then you'll be fine. So just try and pop those on as well as you can go round. And this is why I say sometimes it's easier if they are still all joined together, because you can see where you're going to next. Quite get it in the middle, then don't panic. It's just a preference to try and have them put in that way. And again, if you want to go back over to the other side so you know how much you've got to butt these all up against each other, then that's also a good thing to do. So just pull them in so they're nice and snug. And it will depend on how thick your felt is as to whether you have to jettison a flower or a petal or not. But as I say, just try and get in as many as you can, because that does give you that real look of fullness as you're going round. Some of my pins don't want to go all the way through. So I'm going to just carry on pinning these on. You probably don't need to see me. You've probably seen me do enough now to know how to do that, and they're all going to fit in. So my wools is great because it's just going to do enough to fit those all in. If you have to just lift it up slightly to get your pin to go under, then do that. And then we're going to put this under the machine again, and we're going to sew our next row of petals on. And it does take, as you start to get the rows move further down in towards the centre of the circle, it does start to get a little bit more tricky to get your rows under your presser foot. But just try and find a route in. One of the ways that you can do is you can always leave off the last petal in any circle, and so have a bit of a route through into the middle that way. But I've always seemed to have been able to manage it, so I haven't had to do that before, but just know that that is an option for you. So there's the next lot of petals. Just keep them all pressed down so that you've got that to work on. We're going to fluff it all up later when we come to work with it. But I can see I've got my circle going round. Everything's all okay on there. So let's take this to the machine. Make sure your circle on the back is flat. And don't forget as well, I don't know whether you know this or not, but you may have a double lift on your presser foot. So that's my down position for my presser foot. That's my up press position where it normally rests with a gap underneath. But you can as well, sometimes if you push on your lever up, you've got an extra half an inch or so of extra movement. So that comes in really handy when you're trying to do projects like this, because I can lift that up extra high. I can position myself in on top of my project, and then I can then put my needle down ready to get started with those stitching. So we're straight onto this, so let's do a few stitches forward and a few stitches back, and then we're going to start sewing round. needle in the work so we can pivot, and of course we're getting tighter circles all the time, so you will need to pivot at some stage. But my machine is still coping very nicely, so hopefully yours will do too. Just change that direction slightly before I take the pin out. Just again, any final adjustments you need to make to your flower you can do. I'll change the camera angle again to be in front so you can have a look and see that way as well. Hold on one second. I'm still practicing with camera angles because I've got a new mount on my camera, so let's see how it works. Okay, so here we go again. So that needle in the work really anchors those petals down, and then we can then just change direction. Just hold your petals down so they're nice and flat. Try not to sew over pins if you can help it. Sometimes on a project like this they can get hidden a little bit. And that one seems to have pulled a little bit back, so let's just pull it a little bit further forward if we can. That's it, hold those petals down. That one's starting to lift up. You see how that one's starting to lift up? So I'm just going to lift up my presser foot, just smooth that petal back down. Put the presser foot back down again. There's a pin there. Circle again, closing that circle up. So again, another petal look that's starting to go over the presser foot. So just lift up your presser foot, tuck it underneath, and then sew round. I do have a habit of trying to poke up. You can see our thread for our starting thread just here, so we know we're nearly at the beginning again. And there's no pins left. So we get to the end there, just reverse. Just take our needle out of the work and lift that out. So here we go. We've got our 2 rows of petals on now. So let's now get the next one. So we've done 1, 2, so we need petal number 3. That one's number 4. So let's go on to this one. There are less each time you go round, so that's a good tip as well if you're starting to you think you've missed out some, then just have a count of your petals, and whichever row is the most is what you'll be working on next. So again, let's go and pin these in place. So let's start with this together, and the end of the petal is going to go onto the end of the edge of the circle, and then we're going to put a pin in. Just make sure everything's lying all nice and flat. Just move these round so that we've sort of got a bit of a shape going on. So we can put one in at the other end, can't we, as well? And that seems to work to close the gap, and then we can see how many we're working with. Try and get your pin down if you can. A lot of petals already on here. But that's what's going to give it the drama. And it's the drama that we're wanting for that impact. Just keep you looking through for your petals for where you are, and just keep looking at the edge of your circle. Just place the next one along. Just keep your fingers on it until you've got your pin to be able to put your pin through. You can see how these edges are starting to form now. They look lovely, don't they? It really is a really lovely project, this is. It's a lovely cushion. Well, that one's falling a little bit back. Pull that forward. I think the one before is a little bit further forward as well. Let me just move that one. So we're working on the same. It's easy as well to sort of get onto the wrong circle sometimes. So just keep your eye out on that as well. Make sure that you're on the right track. I don't know how people think of these patterns. You know, they're so clever, aren't they? That's why I never mind at all paying for a pattern where somebody's done all of this trial and error for us, where they've had a go at trying to work out how many petals you need and how far apart the circles need to be. When you're following a pattern, that's all worked out for you. So we can just jump straight into the end result without the frustrations of trying to work out how many are needed. So yeah, especially a pattern like this, as I say, I mean, this PDF pattern I bought over 10 years ago, so if you count how long you've had it, you've got it for life then, haven't you? So there we go, there's our next circle on. And you might look at that and think it's a little bit oval. So this one at the top here, so we could always just move that one just slightly in if we wanted to. Try not to adjust it too much, because once we get these actually into place and once they're sewn on, it's not going to matter too much. So that's how that's looking. So let's go on to our sewing machine again. Bring that into view. All the threads out of the way and press a foot up. And then we're going to slide. Make sure your circle on the back is flat. You don't want to sew that up underneath because you'll have to go back in again. Let's do that double lift again. So there's down, there's the normal up, and let's do that extra lift to get our fabrics underneath. Got a pin there that is wanting to catch up. But again, edge of the presser foot against the edge of the cut edge of those petals. And then I'm going to now just do a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, and then start coming around, needle in the work, take the pin out, and then holding the petals down flat. You can see I'm sort of, the fabric's sort of sliding a little bit underneath, but that's okay, as long as your stitches are nice and tight, you should be fine. I've got pressure on this project as I'm holding it all down as we're sort of helping it through the machine. If you've got a walking foot, this is exactly where that would help you navigate this quite nice and easily, but I just wanted to try and just make sure that for those people who haven't invested in a walking foot just yet, although it is a real investment to have a walking foot, then it's going to hold everything in. I think mine was about £50. I did try once a cheaper one at £12 and it lasted a month, so then I went off and bought the proper Janome one, and that one's still going strong over a year later, so it is worth buying the correct foot for your machine. So that's this one. I'm nearly through. We'll have a quick check just to make sure we've not missed any pins as well. So we're just about at the beginning again now. So I'm just going to just reverse and then needle out of the work and then extra lift up that foot so we can take out the project. I'm going to take off our starting threads and our stopping threads. You see how it's looking on the back there. We've got it fairly even on the back there. I think that seems to be working quite well for us. And then let's just have a little look and just see if we've got any pins. So I'm just pulling the petals back and we should be able to see or feel if there's anything in there that needs to come out. So now it looks like we're all good so far. Okay, so smooth everything down because we want this all to be flat for the moment. And then let's get our petal number 4. And then we're going to do exactly the same again. Let's take off those starting and stopping threads first so they don't come out. There it is. And then starting again on our circle, first one in place with the end up against the pencil drawn line. Let's try and, I forgot on the last row, didn't I, to make sure it was in between, so let's make sure this one's in between the other two. So let's pop that on. And then I'm actually sewing it to the, not sewing it, I'm pinning it to the petal in it behind it, and that seems to be working fairly well for me because it's a little bit higher, isn't it? Got a little bit of a bump on the end of that, so that's giving me that room. Let's go back to, so I'll get a couple on and then come back to the others and you'll see how tight these have got to then be put in together in order to fit all of your petals in. And my petals are going to fit. This is a wool viscose felt that I'm using, and that's going in. Oops, that was a pen. Oh, there it is. That's going together very nicely. If you're enjoying this tutorial and you know you're not a subscriber, then I'd really love it if you'd consider being a subscriber. It's always nice to know that people are watching. It's not compulsory though, very happy if you like popping back. I think my split is about 60-40 between people who watch who are subscribers and those who aren't, and the 40%, would you believe, are the people who aren't subscribers. I don't, so yeah, it's always interesting to see. So, oh, that one's not pinning onto anything. That's it. And then just one more. You can give them a tug and you can see, or either look for the pin, or you can give them a tug and see which one is right. But don't judge the finished flower at the moment by how it's looking at the moment, because we've got it really squished down flat so that we can do the sewing. So there's that last one, that last row going in. So over to the sewing machine again. And this is where it starts to get a little tricky. Make sure that the back circle is all flat. And then you're going to then lift up your presser foot to the double extension height, and then put your petals underneath. And then edge of your presser foot against the circle line. Find a thread to hold on to, just to do a couple of stitches just to start you off forward and back, and then needle in the work. And then this is a really tight circle, so we're going to just do a few stitches at a time. I'm just going to guide that fabric around. There's a lot of sliding going on, but luckily this felt does slide quite nicely. So we can pivot as well. Just lift up the presser foot with your needle in the work, and then you can then change direction. It gets quicker and quicker as you get through, because you've got fewer petals. Just make sure you're getting over the edge of those petals just to hold those in place. You don't want any coming loose. Missed a pin there. Put them back in there. So I will disappear off in a short while once we've got this flower actually sewn, because then we're going to, I'll come back to you when I'm actually attaching it onto the pillow. So I'll make my pillow myself, and then I will come back to you to show you how I attach it onto the pillow, because that's quite an interesting exercise as to how to do that. And also at the end we'll also be fluffing up our pillow as well to make sure that that's looking as good as possible. And I've got a little tip for how to get these petals so that they have some kind of structure to them as well. So a little tip for that as well. So here we go, there's our flower looking all lovely. And the next stage that we're going to do is we are going to now be working with the number 6 petals. So yes, we've got number 5 here still. We've not forgotten about those. We'll be using those in a minute. But first of all, we're going to go on to number 6 petals. So this time you're going to need a hand sewing needle, and we're going to hand sew this section here and those together, and then these then go fit into the centre of your flower in here in the gap we've got there. So let me get my hand sewing needle and we'll get started. Okay, so I've got a hand sewing needle here, and we've got our 5 petals for numbers. Oh, should only have 4, sorry. I cut an extra one by mistake. So choose one of your petals, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tightly wrap it up with the raw edges together all the way through here, just like this. So you've got a really quite tight little bud in the centre. That's what it looks like on the end, or on the petal end, and that's what it looks like on the other side here. And then you're going to take your needle and thread, and we're just going to take a few stitches through this just to hold this in place together. Oops, that's it. So you're trying to keep that cylindrical shape if you can do, but just start off with a few stitches backwards and forwards just to start it off. Okay, so that's holding on to that. So let's just take that thread off now and take off our little loose ends there. So you've got a nice tight little cone shape there for your start of your first one. So it's going to be the centre section. The next thing you're going to do then is you're going to take your other 3 leaves and you're going to overlap them. So you want a little bit of a gap between the points, but not too much of a gap. 1, 2, 3 on like that. And then with a needle, with a knot in the bottom of our needle. Oops, pinged off. We're then going to just put a few stitches through just to hold this in place. So you're just going to start from where the first overlap is, and you just need about 1/4 inch in. So that's going over there, and then once you've got the other one, then you can put your third one just behind. So we've got 3 in a row like that, and then that just carries on stitching through here. And just do a double stitch at the end there just to secure that together. There we go. Just put a needle in and a knot in the end of the work so that we've got that in the end of the word. Put a knot in the end of the thread for later. Right. So you've got your tightly curled piece just here. We've got your 3 pieces like this. And then you're going to need your 5 pieces that are sewn together, the ones where we did them double. This is your petal number 5, and there are 5 of them, so that's all good. So the next thing you're going to do now is you're going to overlap these like they would be on a rose bush. So you want to have the point of this one here goes in between the point of those 2 just there, and then you're going to fold that first petal over. Just move it over slightly, I got it too close. That's it, you want it to be able to, and you're going to tuck that end in, and then you're going to roll the rest of them around to give you that nice tight bud shape. Keep your raw edges together at the bottom. Just do a little bit of pulling and tugging to make sure that that's all looking right, and that's how that's going to look in the middle there. Looking lovely. Oops. Don't drop it. Keep that nice and tight on the end there, and then with your needle and thread again, I'm just going to start and go across through that centre. Oops, I'm going off camera, aren't I? Sorry. Through the centre. Oops. You're trying still to keep it in a centre side, so try not to squish it across into a rectangle. You want to be going across backwards and forwards so that you've got it in a circle on the end here. Just keep pulling it in nice and tight. And this is just securing all of those petals in together, so you've got that lovely, lovely tight front centre going on. And then we're going to choose one of our petals here. Now I've got all mine together, so again, we might, in the pictures that the lady Nikki does, who designs this, she has those petals separated, so you can do if you want to, but you're going to start off by putting one to the side. So you can see we've got a gap in the petals just there, and then we've got this one going in just behind it. So make sure the raw edges are together again, and then we're going to just do a couple of stitches just to attach that petal in place first. I just need a couple just to hold that in place, and then we're going to move on to the next petal, and we're going to have that going around it like that. So all of these 5 are going to be evenly spaced around the outside of your centre bud. Oh, let's not get tangled up. Okay. And once we've got that one on, let's place the next one. And these are going to pretty much just go side by side along the base here. Just try and make sure that you keep the edges together. And in actual fact, I think it's coming back to me what I've done before is I have, take that thread off there. That's one of the starting threads from when we were sewing the petals over. Is if you position them all, so hold the bud upside down in your hand, and then you can then position your petals in place so they start and finish at the same place. Take off any loose threads as you're going along. We'll adjust those later at the end. So just hold those so they're all holding together, and then you can go from one to the other. Just make sure that you keep going through the centre as well, so that you attach the centre to the back as well, so as you're going round. So now we can just keep on attaching these outside petals on, just by holding that on in our hand. And I'm just kind of keeping to a bit of a 1/4 inch seam allowance that I'm just trying to use at the bottom here, just so that that's spacing. We don't want the petals to be different lengths on the same level, at the same sort of circle. You want them all to be the same. So again, just doing a few more stitches just to make sure these are all nice and secure without tangling your thread up like I have done. Just pull that back a little bit. Oh, we've got a little bit of knot going on. Thread doesn't like knots, does it? So this all looks kind of messy and a bit kind of haphazard, but we're going to be pulling all of these threads out later, and just not threads out, we're not going to pull them out, we're going to pull all the petals into shape later, but for now we just need them all to be attached quite nice and securely. I'm just going to use my work surface just to push the needle through the felt, just to make sure they're all properly connected. Okay, see, as the felt gets thicker it gets harder to get the needle through. You can use a thimble if you need to as well. So once we've done all of those, let's just cast off with a few stitches around the outside, just a few little back stitches. It's not going to come undone, but it's always nice just to have that all tidied off. So let's take our needle and thread off. So this is what it looks like when you've just finished, but when we start to pull the petals back into shape again, make sure they've got their shape and that they've got their spacing. It starts to look better, and of course that's going to sit inside, so that's going to go there. So then we can then place this section here onto the dot in the middle. That's the idea. So look for your little dot in the middle, and the centre of your ball there wants to go onto the dot there. And then you're going to need a nice long piece of thread and a nice long needle, which I've not got, so let me just get that. So now let's, what, a nice long piece of thread again, a new piece of thread that's a bit longer. Let's take a stitch through the middle, just holding that together. So that's attached through just through the centre bit. Let's position that onto the centre bud, and then I'm going to just push my needle through so that I can hold that in place while I just come through to the other side. So that's going to just anchor that bud just in the centre, because then what I've found is that you can feel the centre of the bud through the bottom of your piece. And we're going to take a few stitches now, just going round. They're going to be quite big stitches, but don't worry, because you won't see any of this. The bottom of this won't be visible. It'll be either attached to your canvas if it's a piece of wall art, or it will be sewn onto your cushion if it's going to be a cushion. So it's going to hold on to, just holding that in place for the moment. You can feel that through there. So quite big stitches just to start off with. Let's have a little look and see how we're doing. It's all squished, look. But don't worry about it, I'm going to show you how to fluff it all up later. But that's now attached onto there, that's not going anywhere. But what we can do is, if we take our needle and we go through from the other side to the edge here, we can start and fold those petals back now and see the felt, and we can see where there's any gap in the stitches. So let's take a stitch through the felt and then through a petal on that centre bud, and then through a stitch through the felt there and through a petal. and I'm just rolling the flower over, if you can see, just so that I take a little stitch all the way around. Oh, getting caught on other petals. I always think at this point it's never going to come right. It's always going to look quite messy and a bit informal like this, but you'll be surprised how well it looks when we fluff it all back up again. But we can't really properly fluff it up until we've actually attached, or until we're at the point where we've attached it, not attaching, but we've already attached it to our pillow or our canvas, because that's the point at which then we can start to fluff out these flowers. The only thing I will say is that we can stitch some of the flowers together before it goes onto the canvas, just so that makes it easy to wear, but you could probably work with it afterwards as well, so that should be fine. So again, I'm just making sure that all of this is really well attached onto that centre piece of felt. We're enjoying this so far. It's quite satisfying, isn't it? It's quite, I think felt comes together quite dramatically, quite quickly as well, which is always good. So let's take the needle back through to the other side. Now we've got that attached on there. Make sure we've not got our thread going around a petal, which we have. I'm just going to do a few stitches in place just to anchor that down. And just do a surgeon's knot, wrap it round twice. Hold on to it tight and pull that through, and that should give you a nice strong knot. Okay, so let's take that off. So for now, that's it for the flower so far. Doesn't that look beautiful? Not really. But what I wanted to show you is how, when we start to work with these petals, we start to work around from underneath. We start to position the petals and put those all together so that they're all sitting nicely and flat. Can you see how the petals go underneath each other just here? So we're bringing those round so those edges are together on the sides here, and this starts to give us a bit of a platform then from which we can then build the drama for our petals and for our flower. So they all go around like that, and then we then work on the next level and we put the edges of those petals together. So that's that bit there. That bit there. Can you see how the drama is starting to build on the edge here? Look, and that dimension is coming. So from something very flat and not looking very promising, all of a sudden, a bit like a butterfly, it all starts to come together. It is easy to get your petals mixed up with your rows, so just fold them up as well so you can see where you're working with and get those petals all nice together. You'll see how they fold under each other, and you just need to pull them out so they can get that and put those raw edges together at that point there. And that's going to start and give you the shape and the drama. Can you see how it's all coming here? Look. Then we work on the next row. So I'm just showing you now how we're going to do it at the end, just so that you can see, but I'm going to come back to you once I've made my pillow. Okay, so here I am back again. I've got a front of a cushion cover here, and I've piped around the edge. This is to give, when you have the other side sewn on, it to give you that nice edge there with the cord running through it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place my flower onto the cushion, and you can see there's quite a bit of room around here, and I have found in the past that you're better off to have slightly smaller than this, but I'm governed by the size of cushion pad that I've got, so that's why I have got slightly more room. But I think that once the cushion pad is in and these corners fold over the top of it, let's just try it and show you. Whoops, sorry. Banged my cushion. So once that's on top and that's all scrunched in, I think the flower will, oops, you can't see very well there, can you? Sorry. Once that's in and the cushion's all scrunched in there, I think that will give you a really nice full finish. So that's what I'm aiming for. So the next thing that we've got to do now is we have got to fix this flower onto the front of our cushion pad. So we're going to quarter it again. So let's do it so that we're working on the outside. So I'm going to put the cushion, oh, I've got a thread there, look, hold on a second. Let's take that off. So we're going to put our corners together in order to give us the halfway point across the width. And then we're going to then also go halfway again across the other side as well. So we're going to quarter this cushion, and that's going to give us the point at which we've got the centre here. So I'm just going to put my pin through the centre there as we've done before, and that will just give us a centre point in the middle there. You can measure it and then halve it, and we'll just see whether my method has worked or not. I've lost my tape measure, hold on one second. So let's have a look here. So from inside the piping to inside the piping is 16. So that point there should be just over 8, and it is. And then let's just try this side as well. Across here to just under there is just over 16 and a quarter, so it should be 8.25. So we're just about 8. So we just need to be about there maybe. Okay. So yeah, it pretty much worked for us to all intents and purposes, just doing that quartering technique. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my flower in half to find the centre point that we had on the middle there. And I'm going to now just fold in that back, place it so that it's right on top of the pin in the right area. And then once I've got it, I'm just going to put my hand on top whilst I take that pin out, because we don't want to leave that pin in. And then smoothing the circle down on this side here, I'm going to put a pin in just across the edge here. We are going to measure this again, folks, so don't worry. And then turning it round, holding on to that side there, and just pulling on the felt slightly, just to make sure that it's in the right place there. And then again here, just making sure that that felt is sitting nice and flat. So I'm just putting 4 pins in, just in the 4, if you like, north, south, east and west on the compass. So we've got those in there. And what I'm doing is I'm just lifting back the petal, and I'm pinning the fabric, the felt circle, the edge of the felt circle onto the cushion cover. Because now, using our tape measure again, I'm going to measure from the edge of the circle, just so 4 inches to the outside edge of the, oops, can you see? Yeah, 4 inches from the edge of the felt to the outside edge of the piping, that side. Let's measure this side. Well, that's slightly more just there, look, so we need to adjust this slightly, so that's not 4 there. Let's see here if it is. No, it's just not quite in the right place. That's not quite worked for me, has it? So let's take this off again. It might be that my circle isn't quite right. So we're just trying to make sure that we've, basically all we're trying to do is just make sure that this is in the centre as much as possible. So let's have a go and see again. So 4, so I know that needs to be slightly over 4, so let's just take that slightly up. Let's make that 4 1/4 to the outside edge. If you put a pin in, then you know which side you've already checked. Let's go opposite to the corner here, and making sure that's pulled across. That's about 4 1/4 there, so I'm happy with that, that's close enough. And then let's go back this side. And there is some variation in the actual, yeah, that's much better. So there is some variation in the circle possibly when we're stitching it on, and whether we were in the right place when we were sewing the petals on, that's what I'm trying to say. But also this should now just hold on top of there. Yeah, that's probably going to be about right for me. It's just making sure it's as even as it can be, and we can just do a quick visual check as well. So once we've got that ready, we're then going to just go round onto the corners now, and we're just going to put some more pins in. So just go again, just lifting up the petal and just putting the pin inside there, onto another corner here, And I'm going to put those pins pointing in towards the middle because we'll be able to get closer to those then before we have to take them out. I will adjust the other ones. So another one here on a corner. We've got one corner left to do, haven't we? And the felt, depending on your fabric, unless you've got a very silky fabric, your felt tends to stick a little bit to your cushion top, so that works really well. Let's just pop these other ones in, pointing into the centre as well. And then we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to use a 3-step zigzag stitch. I'll show it on you on my machine which one it is, because we could just use the zigzag and use a tight zigzag and zigzag around, but I like the extra security that the 3-step zigzag gives. Again, this is all personal choice, so I can just tell you what I do and then you can choose what you want to do. So if I just lift up the edges there, you can hopefully see we've got our pins holding that all the way down just around there, so we can work around. Okay, over to our machine, and let's talk about this 3-step zigzag stitch, shall we? Put that just on there for the moment. Let me just adjust the camera angle, hold on 1 second. So the 3-step zigzag I'm going to use is this one just here. You can see there's a broken line as it goes to the point and then goes back to the point and across to the point. So there's 3 stitches to each point. So rather than a zigzag stitch, which is this one, which is 1 stitch, 1 stitch, 1 stitch, 1 stitch either side, this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it goes that triple 3 stitches in one leg of your zigzag. So I think that's a really good stitch to know about and to use. So let me just move my camera again, and then we'll have a look at positioning this and getting it sewn. Okay, so let's try this angle and see how this works for us. So we've got the blue thread in our machine to match the felt, and I'm going to just do that double lift up in order to get my fabric underneath, and then right on top of a pin I'm going to manipulate my fabric so that the felt is flat. The felt has got to stay flat, but I'm pushing all of my petals out of the way, so you can then see why we didn't bother with trying to get those all settled and all nice and looking nice. So that's the fabric under there. So I've got my machine there, and I've got my threads here, which I'm going to hold on to whilst we get started. And then it's going to do, let's change my stitch onto the triple zigzag, and I want it to be a nice and wide zigzag on here. So we're going to do the full width so it's nice and holds on to everything. So across it goes. And put your needle in the work just so that you can twist as you go round. So we're just going to keep going round. The secret is keeping your felt flat to your cushion top, and once you can't go any further, just stop with your needle in the work, and then you're going to push all your petals out of the way, expose the edge of your felt, lift your presser foot up and change direction, and then just start again. Stop for that pin, and whilst we're stopped, let's just change direction slightly again. Move those petals out of the way so you can see. Just change direction slightly. Just change direction slightly without pivoting. And try and take your pins out at the last minute so that it hasn't got chance. What you don't want is your fabric to creep as you're sewing it, so you're looking to not have any ruckles in your felt as you get to your next pin. If everything stays flat on your pins, then you should be fine. And again, a walking foot would help with this quite a lot as well. So let's get those petals out of the way. Felt nice and flat. And let's just twist that slightly more. And so we're just going to do that all the way around. Just keep your petals out of the way so you can see where you're heading. Pins in until the last minute. some of them back, so I've got them out of the way. Just stop a second, take this pin out. You can see it's lying all nice and flat. Change direction. Coming up to where we started, so again let's just try and hope that stays nice and flat for us. I'm trying not to have a pucker where it all joins together. I'm just going to use that stitch there just to knot my threads off. So let me just take these threads out of the way, the snips. Take our starting and our stopping thread off. Use that double lift to get the fabric out, which is quite thick. Oops, I'm knocking my camera, sorry. And there we go. Really messy looking flower now, but it is very firmly attached onto our cushion. So if you look there, that's the triple stitch that I was telling you about. So that's quite nice and fixed on, and it doesn't look bad on there at all. So that's just fits on there nicely. And of course all of your petals are going to hide all of your stitching anyway once we smooth all of that down, because there's quite an overhang of the petals onto that circle. So the next thing then that I'm going to do now is I am going to make my lapped zipper for the back of my cushion, but then once that's made we're going to need to put the zipped back onto the cushion, and then I'm going to need to sew it all the way around. So again, that's why I'm not bothering with my petals now, because they still need to stay nice and flat whilst we do this next section. So let me do that, and then I'll come back to you once we're ready to then start and fluff up our pillow and get all of that definition into place for you. Okay, so I'm just getting my pillowcase, I suppose, or pillow cover, in order to sew the outside. I'm using binding clips rather than pins. If you've not used these before, these are really great. They're quite strong, they're little like crocodile clips, but they just hold things together instead of pins when the fabric is quite stiff. And because I've got the piping and the two sides of the cover, so we've got two edges of the piping and we've got the two edges of the cover, then that's quite thick for that to sew through. So I'm using the binding clips rather than pinning. But I just wanted to show you how, and I've left the zip open on purpose. That's not just to show you the flower inside, how that's sitting, but you always need to make sure that when you're putting a pillowcase on or making a pillow, you're sewing it around the outside with a zip like this, you always need to keep your zip open to at least halfway, so that you can get your hand in to then turn it round the right way when it comes to it, because if you don't, you're going to be really struggling to get your pillow turned round the other way. But as you can see, there's our flower, there's where it's attached on the felt circle underneath, and I've just put my top side, and the flower is squished there in the middle of the pillow, ready for sewing. So I'll just sew this round and all the way around the outside. I'll probably go around twice because it's quite thick fabric, and I just want to make sure that those stitches really do hold. So going round twice will really help in that ditch between the piping. You can see there I use a special foot. Let me just see if I can show it for you, which is this one. It's an adjustable zipper foot, so that clips onto your sewing machine just through there. There's a little sort of like hook mechanism there that clips onto your shank for your presser feet, and then with the little twist at the back there, I can move, if I can show you, I can move the zipper foot from side to side. So this is a really great foot for getting right up close to that piping where you can see the edge, look for the piping is just sticking through there, and I need to stitch right just there. I will have to take it slow because over the ends of the zips and where the piping has been joined, then it will need to go really slow, and I'll also need to make sure that as I'm sewing we don't get any puckers in the fabric. So I'll be stopping every now and again, lifting up my presser foot, just smoothing out some of that tension on the fabric, and then doing a little bit more. So it's a slow process, but that's the best way to get the best result. But this is a great little adjustable zipper foot, really great tool that is to have. So that's the one I'll be using. Okay, so once we've got the cover all made, then I'll come back to you. If you were making this with a ready-made cover, you would have to open up your zip or your opening, and you'd have to position your flower on the top, pretty much find your halfway point again on the top with that pin, like we did with this one. But then you'll then need to probably stitch it by hand because you're going to need to smooth it around. So you could put a piece of cardboard inside your cushion cover so it gives you something to pin against, because you won't go inside like this one. I suppose you could though, couldn't you, if you wanted to just go round. It's going to be fiddlier, or more fiddly should I say, but there are ways in order to sew that onto the top so that you can use a ready-made cushion cover if you've already got one. If you're attaching the flower onto a canvas, then you'll just either glue gun it or use fabric glue or glue of your choice in order to put on the back of that felt, and then you're then going to smooth things out. But I think if I was doing that, I would also, when we come to fastening that down, I would also fasten down or glue down my petals as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, let me get this finished. Okay, so as you can see, I've finished my cushion. I have got the pillow insert in there ready, and it's looking quite nice. But what I've done is, this is how it's going to look when you first have finished doing your adding your cushion inside. There's just a few tweaks you need to do now, because what you need to do is to get it to look like this, where it's much more defined. Those petals have got that lovely definition to them and dimension, and so I'll show you how we actually get it looking from this side of the pillow, where it's a little bit flat and a little bit battered, around to this side where it all looks like it's really pristine and it's got that lovely definition going on just there. So what we need to do is, if you get yourself a hand sewing needle, and I've got the same colour as I've been using for stitching mine, it needs to be a really good colour match, that will be fine. And then what we're going to do then is we are going to, working on one row at a time, and I tend to work on the bottom row first, is I've put some little stitches. Let me just turn this around for you so you can see. So in between the petals, I've just put some little stitches in there. You might just be able to see it just there. So that's what we do. We hold these together, so you shape the two petals you're working on, and you hold the edges of the fabric together so that it makes a nice shape, and then you're sort of going to pinch it together, and you want your stitches to be underneath the overhang of the row on the top. So once you've got that, you can then put your stitch in, and you're just going to, without having a knot on, I just then make a few stitches in place. So leave a little tail so you don't pull your thread through all the time. And then you want to go across through, so make sure your needle's going right through and cross into the other side of the needle. Make sure you don't get any little loops on your threads like I've just done there. Always happens when I'm on camera. So just pull on one side then the other. Oh, pulled it out, look. Oh dear. Let's start again. It is very simple. So holding the petals together, we're then allocating about ½ inch down, just over maybe, just sort of, you're trying to get it just as so ignoring the flat bit of the petal, you want on this wall here, and then we're going to then take a couple of stitches. So I usually leave a tail of my threads, so we can take that off in a minute, which reminds me not to pull it all the way through, and then a few stitches on top of each other with that all together. Just like that. So you only need like 4 or 5. It's just like a little tacking thread, and then we're going to take these ends off just here, and then you can then shape those shape those petals, and that's what I've done all the way along here, and it just helps those petals stick together and it stops them from one going under the other like that. And then you work on to the next row, so then you can, I mean, I would go round first and do all of this first row in order to finish off this. I've started already, as you can see, and you can see the difference between where I've done those petals already and they're looking lovely to where I haven't, how they're a bit all haphazard and a bit more out of sync. So it just formalises them all and just makes sure that they sort of all sit nicely together. So let's do that again. So hold your petals together, just get your two that you're working on, and then on that wall you just want to do your stitches through. And if your thread is a really good match, then that'll be fine. I mean, if you wanted to, I suppose you could glue gun these together if you wanted to. You put a little bit of glue on the inside, but this, I don't know, I prefer this. I don't want all those strings of the glue going across, and if these come undone, then I can redo them. It's not going to gunk up the cushion at all. And then just keep moving on to the next one and the next one and the next one, and then you move up to the next row, and as you do, each of these petals then starts to form their formal shape, and as you start to work up, you can see how it sort of pulls the layers in as well, so it gives them the height as well. So let me just carry on doing that then to get the whole of this cushion finished. The other finishing touch that I'm going to put on mine is I've got a little button here that says handmade. So I'm just going to use that. It's a nice little colour. I'm just going to pop that just in one corner, just like that. And that should be really nice. So hopefully that will all come together nicely. So that's the completed cushion for now. I'll pop back in a few minutes when I've finished this completely and show you, and I'll do a roundup then. Well, finally finished. Here's the cushion. Hope you can see all of that detail and all that depth on it. And this is why I say it's not really a cushion for sitting against. It's more a decorative cushion that you'd move out of the way before you sat down on a chair or a sofa. But it's really quite a stunning piece of sewing. Hopefully the cushion looks all right as well, because I made that, so it's got the lap back on it as well. It looks a bit bumpy in places, doesn't it? But it should be fine. So hopefully I think the person who's going to get this is going to like it. So as you can see, it would make a nice piece of wall art as well if it was on a canvas, or you could do 2 or 3 maybe different sizes, that type of thing, or you could do those two-tone, because there's a two-tone petals as well that are in the pattern as well as part of all of that. So there's quite a few different scenarios you can do, and I have made it in different colours as well. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the finished cushion and show you all of its glory, and say that I hope you've enjoyed stitching along with me today. I know it's a really different thing. If you're here for the doll making, then cushions might not be your thing, or these 3D flowers might not be your thing, but I do like a bit of variety in my sewing, so I do try to bring you different projects and things that you can do. So whilst there's a lot of Lily Rose dolls at the moment on my channel, then there are going to be other things popping up every now and again as well. So yeah, that's the cushion. So if you wanted to get your pattern too, then I'll pop links in the details below so that you can pop along to the Etsy page. I'm not affiliated in any way, it's just a pattern that I've got that I've loved having, as I say. And then you'll be able to make it. I wanted to put a little button on the corner as well, a handmade button, so yeah, it kind of just puts a little bit of detail in. Okay, that's it for me from tonight then. So I hope you've enjoyed this. As I've said, if you're not a subscriber already, I'd love you to be, if that's okay. If you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, I'd be really grateful. If you don't mind giving the video a thumbs up as well if you've enjoyed it, and also leave me a comment. That's always very much appreciated and does help push my channel out to other viewers as well who may not have found me yet. So thank you very much for your help, for your support, and I will speak to you all soon. So take care and have a great week, everybody. Bye.